Hi everyone, welcome back to the Wondercast, an experimental show that explores the wonder of the world through curiosity and empathy. I'm your host, Kelly Vinyl, and as always, I'm hoping that you'll do some wondering with me. All right, so unless you've been hiding out in a cave somewhere or, out in a jungle like me, you probably know that everything feels really intense in the world right now. We're dealing with some really serious things, and it's more important than ever to be curious and to listen closely to what people are saying and how people are feeling. It's also more important than ever to think about how we can work together to take care of each other and this beautiful planet that we live on. We'll talk more about that in just a second, but first, let's kick off the show with some good news. I feel like we need good news now more than ever. Okay. First up, we've got a couple of high school sophomores, Drew Pye and Matthew Casertano, up in Montgomery County, Maryland. They were worried about the elderly people in their community during the global pandemic. So instead of playing video games or taking a million naps, they decided to mobilize and organize. They created an organization called Teens Helping Seniors, where teenagers deliver medication and groceries to seniors in their community. As of this recording, they've expanded to 21 different cities, and they're continuing to grow. If you want to find out more and maybe, join in, check out teenshelpingseniors.org. Let's see, we've also got a professor named Dr. Richard Hine out in Wisconsin who uses lab rats to teach biology. Now, you might think rats are scary or gross, but they're actually really, really smart and really social. And actually, they clean themselves more than cats do. And I might be a little bit biased because I used to have pet rats, but rats really are the coolest. Anyway, instead of sacrificing the rats at the end of the semester, Dr. Hine has started an Adopt a Rat program where he adopts out each and every one of those rats to a good home. Okay, now let's take a look at some good news right here in Atlanta. All right, so there's a 6th grader out in Decatur named Jason who has been playing his trumpet outside of Emory Decatur Hospital at sunset every day. He picked a time when healthcare workers are either coming in to start a shift or just finishing a shift. And he serenades them for their service, and he's really good too. You should check him out. And finally, I would love to give a shout out to the amazing people that started Atlanta Beats COVID, which is a group of Atlanta makers who have banded together to make face shields and masks and gowns and other protective equipment for healthcare workers. They've already provided more than 19,000 protective items to healthcare workers, and they're not stopping anytime soon. You can find out more about them at atlantabeatscovid.com. I think it's really important to talk about the thoughtful things that people are doing for each other all the time, but especially now, so keep them coming. But you know what? It's just as important to talk about this serious stuff too, even if it makes us feel a little sad or uncomfortable. And even if it makes us change the way that we think about things, and maybe especially if it makes us change the way we think about things. The thing is, even though we're all humans on this planet, we're not all the same, and that's pretty beautiful, right? Some people are really good at painting, while others might be better with numbers or math. And then there's some people that are just really good at bowling or rollerblading. Some people use sign language to speak because they're hearing impaired, or others might need a wheelchair to get around. We all have different strengths and abilities, and those are the things that make us unique. And we all deserve to be treated with kindness and respect, and to get the support we need to live happily, right? Now, you've probably noticed that humans come in all different shades of skin colors, right? Maybe you're thinking, I'm colorblind. I don't see colors, I see humans. And that's a beautiful way to think about it. But you know what? It's really important to notice the things that make us different, and it's also important to celebrate the things that make us different. Plus, it's really fun to learn about other cultures. And maybe most importantly of all, it's important to notice when people are treated differently for the color of their skin. Because unfortunately, the reality is that in this country, people are treated differently for the color of their skin, especially people with black and brown skin. And it's important not just to notice, but to do something, to use your voice to speak up for someone else that's being treated unfairly. Of course, you've probably heard the term for what I'm talking about. It's called racism. And there might be some jerks out there who are racist on purpose, but for the most part, all of us are born into this world a little teeny tiny bit racist. It's natural. And that's okay as long as we do something about it. If we commit to learning more and doing better. This moment in history right now It's asking us to pay attention. It's asking us to really, really think about how the systems that we have in place for health, for education, and for safety aren't supporting all people equally, which means that Black people and people of color don't always get the same protections and benefits that white people get. One of the very many ways that this shows up is looking at which places and which people are more affected by pollution than others. Let's think about this. All living things, in some form or another, rely on air, soil, and water to survive, right? So, if any of these things that are so important get polluted, then people suffer. And the little bacteria suffer too, and it just kind of throws off the whole system. All right, well, you might ask, what kinds of things cause pollution? And let's start by thinking about water. There are natural causes of water pollution, like volcanoes, animal waste, talking about fish poop, and algae blooms. It turns out a lot of water pollution comes from humans, though. Water pollution can disrupt the entire food chain and also make humans really, really sick. When it comes to talking about pollution, I thought I'd bring in someone who's way smarter than me and knows way more. Because it's always a good idea to talk to people who know stuff so that you can know stuff too, right? So I'm super excited to introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Dr. Eri Saikawa. Dr. Saikawa is an associate professor in the Department of Environmental Sciences at Emory University and in the Department of Environmental Health at the Rollins School of Public Health. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Kelly.
Eri won't tell you this herself, but she is very impressive, truly. She's one of the nicest, smartest people that you'll ever meet. One of the things that I love about Eri is she really, really cares about our planet and the people living on it. She's curious, she's thoughtful, and she speaks up for people who aren't being treated fairly. Growing up, Eri spent time living in Japan, in South Korea, and in London. And when she was 13 years old, she had this aha moment. She knew that she wanted to study air pollution and find a way to make it better. Now, she runs her very own lab at Emory University.
So my lab focuses on broadly air and soil. And we're interested in why we have air and soil pollution, where these problems come from, and how we can mitigate them.
Her lab's not small either. She has 14 humans working with her, and that's just over the summer. I asked her what she hopes that her work will achieve over time.
So I hope that we can find a way to be a bit more friendly to the environment.
Eri is really interested in how everything is connected. So she doesn't just study the science of pollution, but she looks at where the pollution is coming from, how much there is, and who it's affecting. Anyway, I wanted to get a feel for just how much pollution there is on our planet.
So as long as we live, I guess pollution is inevitable, but I think there is also a lot of pollution that we can prevent. So for example, plastic is burned in some parts of the world, but we could reduce the amount of plastic to prevent that from happening. So we can be bringing our own grocery bags and not use any of them. There are a lot of examples like that we can prevent.
I totally agree. We can also bring a water bottle so that we're not using disposable bottles all the time. Or if you want to be really cool, you could also bring your own straw or maybe even your own utensils. I mean, if you brought those to a party that I was at, I would want to be your friend. It can feel really daunting to want to fix everything and then think like, oh, well, I can't fix everything, so it's too hard, I give up. But I feel like if everyone does a tiny little bit, even just, remembering to bring your bags to the grocery store. Anyway, I asked her what are some of the big things that cause pollution.
So heavy industry like steel and coal-fired power plants are the major emitters.
Okay, so when you say power plants, like basically when we're using electricity, that's creating more pollution?
That's exactly right.
Why should we care,
I think we should care because pollution can cause health issues. They can get into your lungs, can cause lung problems, and also can cause heart problems. She told me that pollution can cause us to lose crops and just kind of throw off the whole ecosystem. Plus, it can just make everything look a little bit dirty. All right, so what can we do about it? So everything we do in life is causing some kind of pollution. What we eat, where we go, how we go to places also matters. But I think thinking about it, there's everybody can do some small parts to reduce it. So if you walk more instead of driving more, if you eat less meat, that's one way. But also, I guess, doing something to stop the big companies that's using a lot of energy.
Okay.
That's also another way to stop it too.
She says voting is one way, voting for people that really care about the environment. Another way is holding companies accountable and really pressuring them to be more environmentally friendly. And I think sometimes we forget how much power we have collectively. Like as a community, if we organize with each other and collaborate with each other, I think, you can make a difference. Honestly, I really believe that. All you young people watching right now, I want you to know that you do have power to make change. If you organize and work together, you can really make some things happen. The people that are in power now and making decisions now, they're not going to be around.
That's right.
When the world is exploding and, whatever. All right, so next I asked about a really cool project going on in her lab. They developed low-cost air quality sensors and put them all over Emory's campus.
Yeah, so this was a project that got started because one of my students wanted to do it. So Ken Wakabayashi, then I guess a third-year student, came to my office one day and said, I want to create a low-cost air quality sensor network on Emory campus. And so I said, okay, that sounds great. Let's do it.
That's awesome. Keep that in mind. If you have a really good idea, tell someone. Maybe they can help you do it.
I really like when students come with an idea, that they want to do. And I thought that was really great project.
Okay, so these are low costs. They don't cost a ton to make or maintain. And then they're basically taking measurements of the air quality. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so mainly particulate matter is what we are looking at. So those very small particles in the air. Yeah.
Particulate matter is basically particles and droplets that are in the air. So these air sensors, they're looking to see how much particulate matter there is so that we can see how clean the air is or not clean. And so you can kind of compare over time what the different numbers look like.
Right, exactly. Okay. And then different seasons and different time of the day.
She says depending on where you put these sensors, you can figure out if the pollution is coming from cars or from something like a power plant. The way that they work is actually pretty simple. The sensors have LED lights that shine out into the air. We know how much light is being sent out, and then we measure how much light comes back in the other side.
The more the small particle pollution exists, then the light will be scattered more, and so there is less light that's going to be received.
Okay.
So then we can see how much pollution there might be.
Okay, so wait, is all air pollution bad?
So that's very interesting because we do need some of the particles. If we didn't have any, then we cannot make clouds, for example. So it's not like everything is bad, but we don't want so many in the air.
All right, so let's think about this. Our lungs are busy sending oxygen to our muscles so that we can do things like ribbon dancing or cartwheels. But when air pollution gets all up in there, it kind of messes things up. Sometimes air pollution causes less oxygen to get into our lungs, so it's a little bit harder to breathe. Okay, so think about if you did 20 jumping jacks right now. You would probably get a little bit out of breath. I mean, unless you're a superhero or like a ghost or something. Your muscles are working harder, so your lungs have to take in more oxygen to keep up, right? When you breathe in air pollution, your lungs have to work even harder, and sometimes they can just make you sick. Let's keep thinking too, because the gunk that's in the air, it can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Sometimes you can see it, like smoke coming out of a chimney. Other times, it's so small that you cannot see it with your own eyeballs, unless you have laser vision. Here's an idea. If you take a wet towel to a nearby park and wipe it on a surface, like a bench or a slide or something like that, well, number one, people might look at you weird, but like, who cares? You're doing science, it's cool. But number two, if you look at that towel, you can see all the little tiny debris that comes from chemicals, from factories, from cars, all sorts of things. That's the stuff that gets into our lungs and makes it harder to breathe. Who wants that, right? She also told me about a really cool experiment that you can do at home. It's called Cloud in a Jar. And who doesn't want a cloud in a jar? I'll put the link to that experiment in the show notes too.
So you are also working on a project based around soil.
Yeah, so we started the soil project because we were very interested in how agriculture affects air pollution.
So that got her thinking. There are a lot of people in the city that grow gardens in their yard. That's what we call urban agriculture. But Eri thought to herself, is anyone testing that soil to make sure that it's safe to grow food in? Spoiler alert, nope. Eri knows a lot about this kind of thing. She knew that if there was something in the soil, it would probably be, lead or mercury or arsenic, something like that. These all have something in common. They're all heavy metals. And that's not the kind of thing you want your vegetables growing in. So Eri and her students decided to test the soil, starting on the west side of Atlanta.
And then we found quite high lead concentration levels in West Atlanta.
She teamed up with Historic West Side Gardens, and they decided to work together to figure out where it was coming from.
And one of the gardeners brought us the slag pieces and showed us if that was possible, that was causing the contamination.
In case you're wondering what slag is, because I had no idea, slag is basically a bunch of really cool looking rocks in the ground that actually aren't very cool at all. Slag is a waste material that's left over from smelting. And smelting is a process that people have used for a really long time to make things like lead or copper or silver. Back in the 60s, there was a whole lot of lead smelting going on in Atlanta. But back then, they had no idea that the waste material was actually harmful. So not only was this slag just kind of dumped wherever, it was also used to build houses.
We found mounds of slag, the waste material from smelting, in one of the empty lots. And that had more than 10 times higher levels than the EPA threshold for residential soil.
Wow.
Whoa, okay. So EPA stands for Environmental Protection Agency. Maybe you've heard of it. The EPA's job is to protect the health of humans like us and the environment. So basically, the EPA determines what levels are safe for us in our communities. And this soil was 10 times that level. Yikes.
Wow.
So that started the EPA investigation.
Remember, all of this happened because Eri was curious. She thought maybe we should look into the levels in our soil to see if it's safe. And it's a good thing that she did.
Do you think it's only the west side of Atlanta?
No.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and then there was also slag pieces in Oakhurst as well. And so, yeah, it's very unclear how widespread this practice might have been.
Eri says that it's possible that this could be all over Metro Atlanta, but for some reason, there isn't really a record about this that she can find anywhere.
Yeah, like somebody somewhere knows, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, I want to take a really quick pause because I want to make sure that you're not freaking out too much. Yes, contamination in the soil is not a good thing, but
the biggest exposure comes from the kids eating the soil directly. Eating the contaminated soil directly. And so that's the major concern, especially for the small kids.
She says that if you grow food in a very contaminated area, depending on what it is that you're growing, you could get really sick.
Kids especially can get exposed by eating the edible vegetables as well.
She says that things like kale and cabbage are more likely to take up heavy metals. So those are the types of vegetables that you might want to worry a little bit about. And sometimes compost can be contaminated too. But there are definitely ways that you can protect yourself. You could grow your garden in a raised bed with soil that you bought so you know where it came from. And make sure you wash your hands if you go out in your backyard and you touch a lot of dirt. And with COVID on the loose, I think we're all really good at washing our hands by now.
I think sometimes when you grow food in your own garden, you think that it's also organic and clean, and then not really care about the soil, but then the soil could be dirty, contaminated. I think that's something to think about.
If people want to help with this project, how can they help?
Yeah, so we are now trying to have like a citizen science day to have people collect soil samples on their own and then bring it to us.
If you haven't heard of citizen science before, oh boy, you're in for a treat. Citizen science is a great way for anyone that's curious to collaborate with scientists. It's basically just gathering a lot of people in your community and collecting samples to solve a problem that you're all really passionate about. By the way, there's a great website called scistarter.org, and they have over 3,000 citizen science projects already going on. In the case of Eri, think about it. The more samples we collect, the more we can figure out where the pollution is and how much there is, so that we can be healthier. But imagine Eri trying to do that all by herself. That would take so long. The project isn't officially up and running just yet, but she hopes to have it ready by the end of the summer. And don't worry, when it is up and running, I'll make sure to let you know. Of course, since, we're in the middle of this big global pandemic, Eri's had to shift her work a little bit.
Yeah, so we've been looking a lot about the link between air pollution and COVID, for example, and trying to continue the soil contamination work by engaging more people online.
I'm wondering, does pollution affect everyone equally?
Yeah, so it doesn't affect everybody equally at all. In the US, we're exposed to much less pollution than those in some other countries, for example. And the countries with lower economic levels tend to have much higher pollution levels. And within the US as well, pollution doesn't affect everybody equally either. People of color and those with lower socioeconomic status tend to be more exposed with harmful pollution.
Do you know why, or a good way to explain why?
So I think there has been many systemic racism that has resulted in the current environmental problems that we are seeing.
Okay, so this is actually a pretty good example of what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. Eri says that people of color and people that live in communities with lower income are more likely to end up closer to more pollution.
Which is, what can we do about that?
So I guess we need to stop systemic racism for sure and start thinking about a healthy and equitable society for everybody.
So that means thinking about how we can make sure that we're including everyone in this conversation and making sure that there aren't certain groups that are getting more benefits or protection than others.
And I think we have to be courageous to say, we're not going to continue what we have been doing, and we are going to change, and that's what we want. So I think the kids wanting it is the one very big step that we need. I think reading books is one of the very ways that I use, and then that's very helpful. And talking about it is definitely another thing that we can do. Talk about it with your friends, with as many diverse people as possible. So I remember when I was a kid, I went to an international school, and that just completely changed the way I think, because people see things very differently. And I never knew that we could have so many diverse opinions.
Yeah, because I think learning is not something that always feels good, because learning can make you feel uncomfortable.
Right.
Or maybe you feel kind of stupid.
We talked a little bit more about how important it is to get out of your comfort zone and really listen to people that have different experiences than you. You can really learn a lot that way. And speaking of different experiences and listening and learning and growing, I'm wondering, do any of you out there know what today is? Anybody? Okay, I'll tell you. Today is June 19th, which is also called Juneteenth. Some people call it Freedom Day, Liberation Day, or Jubilee Day. Juneteenth is the day that African Americans were freed from slavery in 1865. It's a day for celebration, and it's a great day to do some learning about African American history too. It's also really important to take today to reflect and think about how evil slavery was and how it still influences our society, whether we like it or not. As I said at the beginning of the show, the systems that are in place to take care of us do not take care of people of color the same way that they do for white people. And as we just learned from Professor Saikawa, people of color and those with a lower socioeconomic status are more likely to be exposed to more harmful pollution. Part of the reason for that is that the systems that we have in place to make decisions about things like where to put power plants, those systems are pretty racist. So here's my challenge for you. I want you not just to notice, but to be really, really curious and be willing to learn more. I want you to really listen to people's experiences and their stories, especially people that are different from you. Let's use our hearts and our brains to figure out how we can treat everyone with kindness and respect, and how we can speak up to make some changes, because you have more power than you think. All right, that's it for this week. Don't forget to keep going on Wonder Wanders and send in any questions that you have. I'm also accepting drawings or dance moves or puns. Don't forget about those. All you have to do is send an email to wondercast@scienceatl.org. Or you can leave a voicemail at 415-I-WONDER. I may even play it on the show. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.